I was based in France for about 6 years, riding the bike internationally, like yourself and the doc. And when I stopped, I got involved in the bicycle industry. And I was very lucky to work with a lot of the big manufacturers. But what I did find over time was, as manufacturing moved entirely to Asia, we kind of lost a lot of the skill sets and the amount of options that were variable. So as an example, when I was riding, you'd sit down with your frame builder and you'd talk about the top tube length and the seat tube angle and the head tube angle, the characteristics you wanted the bike to have, and you could make small changes and amendments. That's kind of gone out the window now with these monocoque frames, where they're producing literally 154 size frame, which pretty much has to suit everybody. So the idea behind FiftyOne was to bring back that artisanal, handcrafted element where every single aspect of the bike was variable, and to go back to this kind of one-on-one conversation with the end user, but at the same time couple it and marry it with very modern technologies and materials such as carbon fiber. My background in the bike industry has mainly been sales and distribution. I mentioned earlier I represented a lot of the bigger brands, and when I had the idea of FiftyOne, we originally wanted to get someone to manufacture the frames for us, and we look after the nuts and bolts and the bits that we knew. The problem was we couldn't really find anyone that was willing to put the time in. It takes us about a working week to produce each frame here, and every detail is meticulously planned from start to finish. The fact is that when they're set in, it's just perfect. Like, there's no light of day anywhere. It's just perfection. It's obsession, to get it to that level. And we did tour a few factories who were interested in taking the job, but the reality was the workmanship just wasn't where we needed it to be. I made one final phone call to some friends of mine based in Bavaria in Germany, who I knew had this facility. And I asked them would they be willing to show us around the factory, get a better idea of what was involved, and ultimately would they be prepared to produce the frames for us. So they invited us across, but the day before we were due to fly, sent me a little message saying, yeah, your hotel is booked. However, we haven't used that facility in a year and a half. It's been mothballed, and our frame builder, Mara, was 73 and he's retired, and we haven't been able to find anyone to take the business on. So I was in two minds whether to cancel the trip, and in the end we went across, and I said, look, I'll just try and make the most of it. And maybe I'm not the sharpest knife in the drawer, because throughout the course of the day, as we were documenting all the machinery in the process, I thought, well, if they don't really have a need for the material anymore and we're potentially looking for it, it was a kind of a, there's a great thing in Wall Street, about life is made up of moments. It was one of those moments we either crossed the chasm and had the balls to do it, or stop talking about this idea and move on. So long story short, we took all the equipment, stripped it all down, we put it onto two 40-foot trucks and brought it back here to Dublin 12 and set about making the bikes ourselves. Yeah, well, the interesting thing is, obviously we're making carbon fiber frames. The frames weigh probably 850, 900 grams. So in one hand, it's super high tech and modern materials, but ironically the machinery and the plant we're using actually dates back to the 1970s, because the processes involved are very similar to that of making a steel frame. So a lot of the machinery here, for example, the machinery we use today was used to build pursuit bikes for the Russian national team, road bikes for the Polish national team back in the day. So there's a huge amount of history pent up in these machines. So we start with the raw tubing, which we source from predominantly Envy Composites in Utah in the US. That tubing is then cut and mitered, and it's then laid up in the jig. So the jig has to be set up in advance for each specific user. The tubing is then bonded together, and then after that we actually start to lay up and reinforce the tubing with carbon fiber wraps. After that, then the frame is actually placed in a vacuum bag, and it's actually cured, so pretty much baked like a cake. So it spends pretty much close to a day in the oven. It's a very low temperature, long, slow bake. It comes out, it needs a little bit of prep work, and then it's ready to go to paint. So the vast majority of our production goes to the US, Australia, Asia. However, obviously recently we completed Conor's bike, which was a super interesting project. That came about just when I met up with Julian. Actually met him at the 8-day Ross here, and we struck up a conversation. I wasn't actually aware that cycling was part of Conor's training, and the conversation just flowed and developed, and we got to the stage where we actually built Conor's custom bike. Julian actually had all the fit data, so we were able to custom make the bike for Conor. And then the key was to make sure that we had a design that he was really going to like, and something that was really going to fit to his character. We took some inspiration from this magnificent Versace gown that Conor was gifted. So the bike uses the same black and gold theme. However, we stepped up a little bit, and we used actual 24 karat gold leaf. So all the gold you see on the bike, it's not paint, it's actual gold leaf. It comes in these little 1 centimeter by centimeter squares, has to be applied with a tweezers. It's a painstaking process. I just apply the gold alone, I think it took about 2 guys 4 days. It's an excruciating process, but I think the finished product is really magnificent. So the ethos of FiftyOne, as I said, was to bring back this almost holistic, authentic form of creating something of real intrinsic value. Bikes, as with a lot of things, have become part of the throwaway culture we have today. So people spend a lot of money on a bike but tend to maybe update it, or a new colour comes out, etc. We're all about creating something that's timeless, something that's going to outlast us and the end user, something similar to a Swiss watch, or someone who's going to painstakingly restore a vintage car. So we're trying to bring that type of value back into bikes, and how people view them and how people see them. So our goal is that when someone buys a FiftyOne, that is their bike, and that'll be their last bike. There's no need to upgrade, or there's no need to add on anything flash. It's the bike really derived from their soul. So FiftyOne is kind of cycling's superstitious or lucky number, and the legend was born in 1969. Eddie Merckx won his first Tour de France, I think he was 22 years of age, a kid, wearing the number 51, and it had never figured previously in any cycling folklore. But within a 9-year period, 4 of the winners of the Tour de France, and some of the biggest champions that the sport would ever see, would all go on to win their first Tour de France wearing the number 51. So this legend was born around this number and how lucky it was. And when it was released, who would carry the number 51, there was a little bit of media speculation around it, like, can they do it? And that was based on my own time spent in France, when the director sportif would come back from the sign-on with the numbers, and he'd say, "Hey Duff, you're 51," and all the guys would be like, "Oh, no pressure." And I think, what? So I just learned about the legend when I was over there. It's always stuck with me. And I think it tells us, it probably articulates what FiftyOne is. We're a very small niche brand. Most people won't get what we do, and that's perfectly fine. But the people that get us really get us, and I think it fits very well with what we do and how we do it.